Hello and welcome to the tasting of Cheese Lady's subscription box for May. We have 4 delicious cheeses to try today, and I'd like to welcome my co-host Hollie, who's our fantastic volunteer here at the Cheese Lady, and she's a huge cheese and wine lover. Would you agree with that statement, Hollie?
Yeah, can't disagree with that.
Excellent. Well, let's dig right in. So we've got 4 cheeses: Brebis Rousse d'Argental, Wife of Bath, Bonington Lynn, and Pevensey Blue. So a lovely lineup, if you ask me. So Brebis Rousse d'Argental, that's a soft sheep's milk cheese made with traditional rennet, and it comes from France. It's got an edible rind, which is covered with annatto, and that's a natural shrub.
Natural. Okay.
Yeah, natural shrub from South America, and it gives it this orangey color. So it can be confused for washed rind cheese, but it's not. It just gives it the lovely color, and it grows some other friendly molds on the outside.
Nice.
And like I say, the rind is edible, quite delicious. If we smell the cheese, shall we smell the cheese? It's quite an elegant, light aroma. There is a little bit of a milkiness to it and kind of sweetness of the sheep's milk. I don't know if you get that.
Yeah, it's very subtle, elegant, as you say.
Very, very subtle. But you would expect that with the soft cheeses generally.
Yeah,
they will be lighter in aroma.
Yeah.
And in terms of texture, like I mentioned, it's a soft cheese, but it's not gooey, it's not runny. And what I really adore about this type of cheese is that it actually has kind of 2 textures going on inside. Can you see how it has a little bit of a cream line under the skin?
Yeah, I noticed the outer layer. It's so glossy, it's just catching the light there.
Yeah, gorgeous. So I would say this is maybe kind of in the semi-ripe zone. It doesn't mean that you can't eat it. You can enjoy it at any age. But the more glossy parts you get, the more kind of throughout glossy it becomes, the riper it is.
Okay, so that's the rind breaking down more and more underneath. Right,
exactly.
To the center of the cheese. Okay.
It's the activity on the outside of the cheese, on the skin, that's breaking down the texture and makes it kind of creamier and glossier, as you will.
Yeah.
What do you think about the flavor?
It's delicious. It's just so quite indulgent.
Don't you just love the texture? It's just so mouth coating.
The rind gives it a nice contrast to the center.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if you want just the creaminess and the gooiness, you can remove the rind. It's completely up to you. But yeah, I love that mouth coating feeling.
Yeah, it's definitely one for smooshing around the palate.
For rolling around.
Yeah.
Maybe you can close your eyes even and just savor it and see what you discover. I think it's quite a gentle flavor. If we start talking about the flavor. Would you say it's quite milky?
It's milky. I think the rind gives it a little nuttiness.
Yeah, totally.
And it's got a savouriness to it.
Yeah. But also sweetness of the sheep's milk, because if we think of sheep's milk, it's a little bit richer than cows and goats, and therefore it has that kind of buttery mouthfeel, I think. Yeah. What do you think we could pair with this cheese?
I'm naturally erring towards a white wine.
Yep.
But something quite light, probably, nothing with too much body.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm thinking the same. A lighter flavored cheese, a lighter flavored wine. If you like beers, maybe a light beer would be nice. But I'm also a huge lover of bubbles.
Of course.
I can see that working quite well. So nothing too maybe vintage or nothing too oaky, but a light prosecco or even a cava would work a treat here.
Perfect, yeah.
A nice rosé, actually, sparkling would be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the world is your oyster, and explore that.
Quite unusual to get a square-shaped cheese as well.
Yeah, I don't know if it contributes to the flavor in any way, but it's a little bit unusual, yes. However, having said that, there are many quite famous square-shaped cheeses, like if you think of taleggio.
Of course, yeah.
So that's a classic, and I think that's maybe where they were coming from. But it just, it depends on the form that they were using.
And I read as well as Brebis Rousse translates to red sheep.
Correct. Yes. In French, brebis is a sheep. Rousse suggests red. So yes, it's a red sheep.
Perfect.
That's very
Great way
easy to
start.
remember.
It's a delicious one, that one.
Perfect. Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Right. For our second cheese, we've got Wife of Bath. And that's, if memory doesn't fail me, is from Somerset. This cheese is made like a Gouda. So this is English answer to the Dutch Gouda here. And a lot of people don't realize that from the name, because it's called Wife of Bath. It doesn't have Gouda in its name, but in essence, it is a Gouda, because the way they make this cheese is by washing the curd, and that is the process that they use in Gouda making. So what that means is that once they've made the curd, they remove some of the whey and replace it with some hot water. And that makes the curd taste a little bit sweeter, and that's why the Goudas end up being sweeter. So in essence, this is what it is. And texture-wise, it's quite firm. We'll see how it feels on the palate, but to touch, it's a firm cheese. It has a few little eyes dotted throughout. And what I especially love about is the color.
Yeah, it's getting into those golden hues, isn't it?
Yes, it is definitely very golden. And what this normally suggests when it comes to farmhouse and artisan cheeses is that the cows were grass-fed, because there is beta-carotene in grass, and that carries through the cow's system and comes out as this golden, delicious cheese eventually. Not out of cow's udder. I was just picturing that. That would be nice. And an interesting fact about this producer is that they are fully organic. So the milk is fully organic. The way that they make the cheese is fully organic. So it's a lovely organic certified cheese, if that's important
to you. Is it not a vegetarian rennet, this one, as well?
Yes, it is. Yes, it's pasteurized cow's milk and vegetarian rennet. And I think it's a shining example, actually, showing that you can make fantastic cheeses with pasteurized milk as well. I know some people will be staunch believers in just raw milk, and I adore raw milk, and I'm sure you do too. But you can make lovely farmhouse and artisan cheeses from pasteurized milk as well. So, but yes, it's vegetarian as well. So let's have a little play with it and see what we can discover. So texture-wise,
definitely in the firmer category. I mean, there's some bounce there, but definitely in the firmer category.
Well, that's why we won't call it hard. When it comes to hard cheese, there won't be any bounce, but this is firm. There's a wee bit of a bounce.
And is that a natural rind that's on that, or?
I think it's slightly waxed.
It's slightly waxed.
Yes. So when it comes to eating this particular rind, I probably would cut it off. It's a natural rind with a tiny bit of wax, but don't quote me on that one. Yes, that's just my perception. I really love its aroma as well. I don't know if you picked anything up. It's like this buttery, meadowy something going on. Fruitiness as well. Yeah, definitely very complex. Toothsome is my first word.
There's a real bite to it, isn't there?
And the texture is so smooth. What flavors are striking you?
There's a slight sweetness, which would make sense given its kind of Gouda style. Real savouriness to it.
A little bit, yeah.
What else?
I think I get a lot of butteriness. I think it's very, for me, very buttery. It has that kind of richness on the palate, and I see where you're coming from with savouriness, but at the same time, it's so balanced. It's like sweet and savoury, isn't it? There's a touch of salt, but it's so balanced by the sweetness of the milk. So yeah, very gorgeous cheese. I think you could ponder it for a little while and enjoy it at home. Shall we think about the drinks here? I mean, I personally think it's very versatile. So I would increase the body of the wine if we're thinking wine. So maybe a nice fruity white, medium minus red. Let's not overwhelm the cheese. And I think beers would be lovely with as well. Did you want to Add anything else?
No, I think it's a winner as well.
It's a winner. It's definitely a winner. Oh, I forgot to mention its shape. It's also got this very distinctive rounded kind of flying saucer shape. So yeah, wonderful cheese, very popular here. Okay, let's move on to our third cheese. And geographically, we're coming back to Scotland, actually, from England. And this cheese is from Lanarkshire. It's called Bonington Lynn, made with goat's milk. So you would expect, because it's goat's milk, the color to be quite different to cow's milk.
Yeah.
So if we
it's instantly recognizable, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's your giveaway that it's goats.
So golden cow, a lot more ivory, a lot lighter in color. That would suggest to me that it's a goat's milk. Goat's milk, if you think about it, normally tends to be paper white or like snowy white when they're younger cheeses. But this cheese has been matured for a few months. Therefore, the color kind of gotten deeper, if white can get deeper. So that's what we have here. Bonington Lynn is made by Errington Cheese, so they're in Lanarkshire, and it's one of the most incredible Scottish cheesemakers. I have such huge respect for them. The company was started in the early 1980s by Humphrey Errington, who I had the great pleasure of meeting several times and visiting the farm. And he was, and still is to this day, a staunch believer in raw milk.
Raw milk.
So that was his thing. And back in the 80s, you have to think that was really quite unusual, especially in Scotland, because the authorities had it out for raw milk. I wanted to get rid of it. But to this day, they make raw milk cheeses, and that's their philosophy. The company now is run by Svetlana, Humphrey's daughter, and her husband, and their 2 young daughters. So it's like a family operation. Again, we visited them as well, and it's just fantastic. And what Svetlana has done is she added goats to their herd. They used to only have a flock of sheep, and now they also have goats, and they started making a range of goat's milk cheeses.
Nice.
So this is their mature version. It's made to a cheddar recipe. So essentially, Bonington Lynn is a goat's milk cheddar. So that's the quickest.
That's quite unusual, isn't it?
It is fairly unusual, but the other ones do exist as well. But yeah.
And yeah, because I was noticing straight away, it looks like a cloth. It's cloth bound, which is kind of signature for cheddar, right?
Absolutely, it's cloth bound, so that would place it in the traditional cheddar category, because modern cheddars are waxed, and this one is definitely a traditional one. So texture-wise, I think we've gotten firmer here.
Yeah, it's definitely firmer than the Wife of Bath. Yeah,
a lot less give, and in typical cheddar fashion, it has more of a rugged texture when you break it.
Crumbly.
I think there's a lot more sweetness to it and more kind of nuttiness. Definitely a very complex aroma. I don't want to put too many ideas in your head back at home. So whatever you smell and perceive, that is absolutely correct, because everybody's perceptors are different.
Wow. There's a lot going on flavor-wise with this one.
Yeah. What strikes you the most?
It's got that classic cheddar earthiness to it.
Yeah, absolutely. But it also kind of has that sharpness of a cheddar, doesn't it?
A tang, a real tang.
Definitely a tang. But this is a really good example, actually, to show people that goat's milk cheeses are not necessarily smelly. There is, I believe, I've experienced, there is this belief that exists that people think that goat's milk cheeses are farmyardy, or they're smelly, or any of the above. But I would like to say that goat's milk cheeses can be used in making other varieties of cheese. We can make a goat's milk gouda, we can make a goat's milk cheddar, and it's not going to be smelly or farmyardy. In this case, this is quite nutty.
Yes, nutty. Slight sweetness. It's well balanced.
And well salted, I think. It's a real skill to add just enough of salt that it doesn't overwhelm the flavor of the cheese, and the other nuances of flavor come through. And I think they've done this beautifully here.
I agree. Good alternative to cheddar, that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for those people who are looking for alternative to cow's milk. but they still like nice, mature, complex cheeses. This is definitely the one. And I can see myself enjoying this with a glass of red wine.
Red, yes, definitely.
Absolutely. So maybe medium-bodied plus, but something that can be nicely matched and married to nuttiness of this cheese. Lovely. So top marks for our Bonington Lynn. And our last cheese, and I'm really excited about this one, is Pevensey Blue. This is one of our newest cheeses here at the Cheese Lady, and it's actually quite a recent creation, an addition to the British cheese market. And I was really delighted to try it, and I just absolutely fell in love with it.
Yeah, I've never tried it, so it'll be a first
This is
time
your
for
first
me.
time,
Yeah,
literally.
I'm excited to try it.
Yes, you should be. Well, why don't you grab a piece so you can start tasting that?
Oh, wow. Soft.
It's creamy, but
Creamy.
I wouldn't say that it's kind of runny soft.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
It's softer than I expected it to be when I picked it up.
okay.
But it's sort of crumbly and creamy at the same time. If that
Exactly.
makes any sense.
It makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
But that's what I find a lot of blues kind of do. Not a lot of them goo and run like Gorgonzola Dolce. They do tend to keep their shape, but they will be quite creamy on the palate. So the story here is this couple, Martin and Hazel, had a passion for cheese. Martin used to work at Neal's Yard Dairy, actually. I think he managed one of his shops. And then they decided to become cheesemakers themselves. So they moved down to Sussex, and they found a lovely place where they could source fantastic milk. The milk is actually here is also organic, and it's cow's milk. They use traditional rennet, and they make this fabulous cheese. They were inspired by Gorgonzola Picante, which is the firmer Gorgonzola.
I can see the similarities, yeah, now that you mention that, yeah.
And I think they got very close to it, but also they managed to create a quite distinctive cheese.
I'm really enjoying it.
Are you just speechless?
Yeah.
That's how I was.
Might need to cut me another piece.
So yeah, I was super impressed with it. It's a little bit like Gorgonzola Picante, but also it reminds me, when you see the whole wheel, of Blood d'Auvergne, which is the French classic cheese. So it's kind of in between those two. Like Hollie said, the texture is quite dense and creamy, but also a little bit crumbly, because it's kind of separated by the blue vein in there, which is fantastic. And on the palate, I can't tell you in words just how creamy that is. It's gorgeous. There are definitely distinctive nutty notes. Did you pick out any specific nuts? Or are we just gonna go with broad nut here?
I don't know my nuts well enough.
I think the producer says that it's very hazelnutty. I didn't want to be led by that, but I think I tend to agree with them. It's a little bit hazelnutty, but also for me, it's quite milky. It's got that fresh milk flavor to it. It's just like I want to relish it for a long while.
Delicious. I love the creaminess of it, and it's not. I think you said it's kind of medium strength blue.
Yeah.
Just a nice texture.
It's not very bitey. It just has that fab complexity.
Warm and spice, yeah.
Yeah. Are we thinking a red wine here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I am still to try it with a sweet wine. So I think it could work because it's a very complex cheese. So maybe a port, maybe a Banyuls or something like that. But definitely full-bodied red wine, or even like a sweeter red wine, like an Amarone. Definitely could be a winner here. But yes, you can experiment with that back home. Well, thank you so much, Hollie, for joining me. And thank you, everybody, for listening to our little discussion of these fabulous cheeses. We hope you enjoyed them, and we hope you enjoyed our tasting. And of course, if you have any comments, suggestions, we always would love to hear from you. So put them in the comments below, and we hope to see you next time.